2 years have passed since the world as we know it underwent an irreversible transformation. It was supposed to be a straightforward excursion. My son Leo and I had a beach day that swiftly turned into something unexpected. My spouse, Ethan, was unable to attend this time. No, he didn't. Work was quite important to me, and I had become accustomed to being alone. However, that day was marked by a clear feeling of change, both in the past and the present. Carefully unfolding the towels, we basked in the golden glory of the sun. That day's warmth could have been a bit too much. I asked Leo to help me put sunscreen on my back while I lay back, enjoying a fleeting moment of peace away from the bustle of the outside world. I hadn't really thought about it. I am a parent, and my child is mine. What would force me to take such action? At first, it seemed like he was just offering assistance. Appeared after that instant. His fingers repeatedly touched me, getting progressively softer with each touch. I let him go forward without interfering. What prevented me from making that move? You believe you know who you are? You belong to the family. However, there are times when everything can be destroyed in an instant. That day at the beach, it happened to me. I've noticed a significant shift in myself ever since. I was Ethan's wife, and we lived together for over 15 years. People who know us well would have said that we make the perfect couple, living in a lovely house, having happy kids, and leading secure, contented lives. The problems only become apparent when you enter. It is impossible to comprehend the feeling of hollowness until one is fully submerged in it. Ethan's work absorbed his thoughts for years, and he devoted weekends, late nights, and even holidays to it. He did it for us, I would frequently remind myself. His unrelenting work and steadfast dedication were meant to enhance the future of our family. But as time went on, that line of thinking started to become less coherent. How much does an uninhabited house hold in value? He had lost the ability to sense my presence. When he first arrived, he hardly even looked at me. He stopped asking about my needs, wants, and general well-being. We only spoke briefly, discussing things like the kids, food, and bills. He was also worried about Leo and Lily, his younger sister. Even in their presence, he had a ghostly appearance. It feels elusive even if it is there. I used to wonder if he still saw me when I sat across from him at the table. I still remember that morning. I was working in the kitchen when Ethan rushed through the door. He took out his suitcase, kissed Lily's head tenderly, and gave me a quick look. "I'm sorry, Freya. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it today." He said there was an unforeseen problem at work. I decided not to argue with it. As usual, I simply nodded and pushed the lump in my throat down. I told myself that everything would be fine. We could go out together, Leo and I alone. Leo was 16 years old, tall, and lean. The brown eyes of his father looked out from a face with softer, more delicate features. He didn't really respond when he revealed that it would just be the two of us. He simply shrugged, took the bags, and followed me to the car, where he sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window while engrossed in music, as many teenagers frequently do. As I watched him, a smile slowly appeared on my face. He changed so quickly that I often worried that I may lose him too with just a blink. Like so often, I couldn't help but think of Ethan as I made my way down the twisting road to the ocean. I was overcome with recollections of our times together. Movie evenings, leisurely walks, and impromptu excursions, all designed with the intention of having fun. I thought about how he would touch me and how his eyes would light up when he saw me. It had been years since I had felt that way. There wasn't much emotion that I felt. I was completely worn out from carrying the burden of invisibility. When we arrived, Leo helped me move our possessions to a calm spot along the water's edge. While I laid out the towels below the umbrella, he unfolded it. For an unexplainable reason, I felt obliged to talk to him. Maybe he was the only one there at that time. Maybe all I really needed was a sympathetic ear. Is being outside enjoyable to you? As I spoke, I made an effort to convey enthusiasm in my words. He nodded in acknowledgement and brushed his hair out of his face. In response, he said, "Yes, Mom, it's really enjoyable." I felt the warmth of the sun as I lay back on the towel. I gave myself permission to do nothing for a short while in an attempt to temporarily relieve the stress that had built up over the previous few years. I was thinking about sunscreen at that very moment. I woke up from my sleep and looked at Leo. "I would appreciate it if you could help me put this on my back," I asked. "I can't seem to get closer to it." After giving it some thought, he finally reached for the bottle I had offered him. With my back against the towel, I leaned back again and tried to take my time. He touched me gently and purposefully at first, as though he didn't want to hurt me. It made me grin because it reminded me of how his little fingers used to cinch around mine when we walked the streets together back when he was younger and more carefree. "You might want to apply a bit more pressure," I suggested to him, but I continued to speak softly. "Everything is good." With every motion, he exuded his newly discovered confidence as he massaged the oil into my shoulders and back. I was forced to close my eyes by the warmth and rhythm of his hands. I gave myself permission to enjoy it for a little while. I hadn't experienced the warmth of another person's touch in a very long time. That thought weighed far more heavily on me than I should have communicated. His hands then started to go slowly and methodically down my back, following its curvature. I took a deep breath. I tried to express what I was thinking by parting my lips. But then there was stillness. I decided to keep quiet in spite of the flurry of ideas racing through my head. I persuaded myself that everything was fine, persuading myself that my concerns were baseless and that he was only helping. Even though I knew I wasn't, his hands lingered for a short while, hanging close to the edge after he put the towel down. I could feel my own uncertainty weighing down on him. I decided not to step in, though. Rather, I said something that I later regretted. "Everything is good. You can touch that too." The comment remained in the air, laden with a sense of peril, and as soon as I said it, I understood that no one else had the courage to do so. He didn't say anything, but Leo continued without hesitation. I tightly closed my eyes as I felt his hands going places they shouldn't have. I questioned whether he could detect the quick hammering of my heart. I wanted to get up and order him to stop. However, I discovered that I was unable to do so. I didn't do anything about it. The reasons for it continued to baffle me. Maybe it was the feeling of extreme isolation. Maybe it was the desire to be recognized in spite of its inherent shortcomings. Or perhaps I had just stopped caring. A piece of me broke on that fateful beach day, and nothing has seemed quite right since. I value your companionship on this trip. I appreciate your willingness to listen, and I recognize that this may be hard to accept. Please think about liking and subscribing if this story interests you, or if you think it might speak to someone you know. It offers me a sense of companionship on my trip and enables me to create more stories like mine. The time has come to go forward. After that day, everything appeared to have changed. The way that Leo looked at me in the subsequent moments, the things that transpired, and the feelings they evoked in me were unchangeable and outside of my control. It persisted unabatedly and was neither transient nor inconsequential. An elusive quality captured my attention as I stared into his eyes, making it impossible for me to figure out what was causing his strange expression. However, I was unable to shift my attention. Everything was hidden as if nothing had happened when we returned that evening. Toward the end of the night, I folded clothes, made dinner, asked Leo about his school day, and completed my duties. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I thought back on what had happened that afternoon. I kept thinking about him because of his hands, the way he lingered, and the tension I felt. I felt bad about what I had done and angry at how he had treated my own son. Ethan didn't notice anything that was missed. His face was tired and his tie was loose, and he was often late getting home. He instinctively put his lips to my cheek, leaving a subtle reminder of the love that had once been there. Has the day been long? I tried to start a conversation by striking up a discussion. As is normal, he simply grunted and nodded before heading toward the living room. His presence made me an afterthought and gave me the unnerving feeling that I was once again invisible. Ethan's steady snores filled the air next to me as the night wore on. I stared at the ceiling above while I was still completely awake. Even though there was calm throughout the house, my mind was racing with ideas. Leo took up all of my thoughts every single day. His eyes, his hands, and everything that had happened. I had to stop it before it got out of control, because I knew in my heart that it was wrong. However, a darker, more alone side of myself clung to it, longing for the touch, the acknowledgement, and the sense of acceptance. Leo said nothing about the subject as the days passed. However, his quiet had a deeper impact than any words he could have spoken. He didn't leave me alone. Instead, he seemed to hover close. He would watch me while I cooked, cleaned, or just sat by myself in the darkness. I gave in to inspiration. I gave him permission to go on, just as I gave myself permission to do so. The house seemed to emanate heat, as though it were consumed in flames throughout the oppressively sweltering weekend that followed. He slipped away again, compelled by the demands of another sudden change. It was just Leo and me again, so I asked him if he felt okay going back to the beach by himself. I'm starting to wonder why I brought it up. I used to think that being outside could help me think more clearly. It's possible that I felt the need to push myself and see how far I could put everything around me. There was a calm silence during the drive. This time, Leo decided not to pay attention. He just stared out the window while his knees shifted uneasily beneath him. I made a sincere effort to put a notion into words, to say anything, but the words escaped me and would not come out. When we arrived, the beach was all but empty. The soft breeze brushed my face in a cool way, while the water glistened in a striking shade of blue. Leo helped with our preparations as we unfolded the towels once more. I was unable to ask him to put on sunscreen this time. I closed my eyes and lay back, acting as though nothing was wrong. His eyes, however, stayed, eerie and tangible. There was no question that he saw me. The tension approached a breaking point as the afternoon went on. Before leaving, we decided to take a beach shower to refresh up. I wanted the task to go quickly so I could get rid of the sand. However, an unexplainable incident occurred that still confounds me. The first person to step under the tumbling water and let it run down his back was Leo. Before choosing to step in, I stood in the shadows and watched him for a little while. I ended up taking off my clothing and standing next to him in the refreshing embrace of the water, letting its soft current run over my skin. Leo looked at me incredulously. His face was a riddle that was hard to interpret. It could be surprise, doubt, or even something quite else. He said nothing. I said, "You might want to take off your shorts as well." After looking into his eyes for a while, rinsing thoroughly is crucial. I find myself wondering why I say the things that I do. Maybe I was trying to show that I was in charge and that I could stop everything. Or perhaps I was assessing my own abilities or putting him to the test. After a moment of hesitation, he finally gave up and took off his shorts. As the rain poured around us, we were by ourselves. I asked, moving at a slow pace, "Help me with my back." I turned away from him. He did, in fact. He was cautious with his touch like previously. There was no denying the tension between us. His hands touched my waist, and I froze. All other sounds were muffled by the constant rush of the water and the crowded atmosphere. Maybe I could have managed to get out. It was something I had the strength to end. Rather, I leaned back against him, grasped his hands, and pulled them to my chest. While I fought, he stayed out of the way. It is challenging for me to fully describe what transpired. I'm not going to do that. It developed into a tornado of longing, loneliness, and an elusive spirit that is hard to pin down. It was not soft. It was definitely not slow either. In every way possible, it was wrong, fierce, and futile. I desperately wanted to stop, but I couldn't. I didn't want to. After it was over, we were still beneath the unrelenting waterfall. Any remnants that are visible are washed away by the water. He hugged me and held me in a manner that had been missing from my life for years, but he kept the reality unaltered. I let him continue. After that, there was stillness between us, and we were unable to communicate. We dried off, packed up our things, and drove away after a peaceful stroll back to the car. The stiffness of Leo's motions and his red lips were visible in a quick glance. I became aware that I had ruined everything. I was positive that we had crossed a line that would never be crossed again. However, I felt a jolt of life inside of me for the first time in years. There was silence as the automobile ride back started. As though the air itself were working to keep us stationary, the atmosphere inside the automobile felt suffocating and dense. Even though my hands were on the steering wheel and my eyes were focused on the road, my mind was still racing wildly. Yet I could still feel him, the gravity of what had just happened, and his presence and hands hanging in the air. I couldn't help but stare at him from the passenger seat. He stared out the window without moving. The intensity of his anxiousness was evident from his pursed lips and flushed cheeks. He abruptly and unexpectedly broke the stillness. "Mother," he said, his voice scarcely audible above a whisper. I saw that I was avoiding his eyes. Even though I didn't act, I could clearly hear his voice. "What is this? What was the inspiration back there?" My heart was pounding fiercely. I briefly considered pretending to be ignorant, changing the subject, or ignoring it completely. But the reality persisted. Considering our common experience, denial was not comforting. I drew in a tentative breath before admitting to them, "I'm not sure." It was true, or as close to it as I could make it. It proved to be difficult for me to comprehend what had happened and the causes behind it. I just realized that everything had changed. As soon as we pulled into the driveway, the silence persisted. As I stopped, the engine became quiet. However, neither of us left our spot. Leo then gave me a close examination. As I stared into his eyes, a certain horror grabbed me. It wasn't uncertainty, nor was it guilt or shame. It was a wish. "How long have you been having these emotions?" His inquiry chilled me to the bone. As I looked into his eyes, I kept thinking about that very question. Something deep inside me woke up. I'm unsure about myself. "Perhaps I have spoken for longer than I intended," I muttered softly. The unsaid words hung heavy in the surrounding hush as we remained in the shadows. I firmly believe that was the end of it all. Our plan was to enter, let it pass, and act as though it never happened. Leo's thoughts, however, strayed elsewhere. I've already had a kiss from him. The door in front of me was openable. At first, it faltered a little. He moved carefully, as if he was afraid I would back off. But instead, I gave in to his kiss, and he gave me one in response. I lost all of my composure at that point. The isolation that had engulfed me was the cause. The years of disregard, or maybe the way Leo looked at me. A look that, after all this time, felt both new and treasured. I made the decision to not fight against whatever was thrown at me. His hands moved over me as though they were supposed to be there as he pulled me closer just outside our house. I felt a rush of life for the first time in what seemed like forever, noted as essential. Nothing else was important. As we became entangled in one another's company, time seemed to float by. We finally ventured inside there. It's a blur on the way to the door. However, both the tense silence that envelops us and the sensation of his hand in mine endure. The scenario worsened when they passed the threshold. We felt as if we had been holding back for ages, and now we could finally let everything out. The dam had collapsed, and then the days became cloudy. When the world faded into the background, Leo had a way of getting closer, looking for opportunities to brush against me or look me in the eye. I pushed myself to end this pattern over and over, but every time I looked at him, I saw the same emptiness that reverberated inside of me. We were like mirror images of each other, reflecting each other's desires, and I couldn't help but say yes. I didn't want to. My eyes strayed to the ceiling as I lay in bed next to Ethan, listening to his steady breathing, feeling the silence surrounding us. Leo was consuming my thoughts. I once again felt alive after being touched by him. Despite the fact that my remorse twisted like a snake inside of me, it was unable to control my determination. I knew quite well that it was incorrect and that the eventual unraveling was coming. However, its alluring charms captivated me. Our relationship continued to worsen until it finally came to an end. I washed dishes at the kitchen sink one evening in an attempt to divert my attention from the whirlpool of ideas racing through my head. Lily slept soundly while Ethan worked diligently. Leo hovered around me. When I turned around, his eyes locked with mine with the same ferocity as they had at the beach. In a gentle manner, I advised Leo to be careful. Despite his desire to run, he remained. I could feel the warmth of his breath across my skin as he got close enough. "Mom, you are always on my mind," she stated. A cold went through me. I thought my heart might burst out of my chest because it was racing so hard. I told him to wait, go back to his room, and give me some privacy. Even though I should have kept those words to myself, I let them out. It is impossible for me to stop. Everything broke down at that precise instant. Leo put his lips to mine once more. This feels like a more difficult time, with a heavy burden of necessity. I kissed him back. The fact that it was wrong did not concern me. I couldn't see Lily, Ethan, or the world we had created together. Leo, my boy, the only person who had made me feel important in years, was all that mattered. Nothing has gone back to how it was before that day at the beach. I don't think it will ever occur. There is no turning back the line that Leo and I have passed. I'm still plagued by the gnawing pain of humiliation, but it doesn't stop me. That is the thing that scares me the most. I look at Ethan and Lily every day and wonder how they manage to ignore everything. They continue to be unaware of the divisions in our family. They might just be too busy living their own lives. Maybe I've just gotten better at hiding it in the here and now. I understand that this is a flight. On the other hand, secrets tend to come to light. It is inevitable that things will fall apart when the time comes. I have tried to see it through to the end. I told myself it was a mistake. Leo and I are both deserving of better. But every time his fingertips touch my skin or his eyes lock with mine, I feel lost, as though his entire universe revolves around me. Because of him, I feel fully alive for the first time in years. Forever, perhaps. I have to face that fact. I am at a loss as to how to fix this, as it is damaged. I'm starting to doubt my capacity to complete this work. That's the exact reason I'm telling this story. I want someone to have the information, the unquestionable truth. which has escaped my thought. I need help immediately to get out of this situation before it gets out of hand. If you know someone who has gone through a similar experience, or if you have any help to offer, I would be grateful to hear from you. Think of this as a warning. You can discover worlds you never thought possible while you are alone. Don't let it take over your life the way it did mine. Don't wait till mayhem breaks out before you realize the issue is what it is. You cannot go back once you cross that line. Thank you for being willing to listen. Kindly share your opinions and observations. Please follow for more stuff and give this video a thumbs up if it spoke to you. The feeling of not being alone is what I yearn for. Self-inflicted betrayals might occasionally be the most profound. All of us act in these ways toward ourselves,